Welcome to this podcast. My name is Jesper Kärrbrink, and I will host a series of podcasts here at iGaming Next. This being my premiere podcast, I'm a bit nervous, of course, but I'm super thrilled having Kresimir Spajic with me here today. And welcome, Kresimir.
Thank you, Jesper, for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you and seeing you.
The same, it is. I mean, we met the first time in Malta 4 or 5 years ago. You were visiting the island, visiting gaming companies, and of course you ended up with Mr. Green and some others, I must say. And then we met over the years in conferences. We had lunches and whatever, and we also end up in long discussions about the industry. And I like those discussions with you because you know it from inside and out. You're smart, you're intelligent, and you have control of this industry, and especially the US market that we will touch on today. So once again, super thrilled to have you here. But I would like to start with, who is Kresimir?
Sure. I mean, let's start first professionally, right? I was experimenting a lot over the years. I worked in all kinds of roles, internal, external, developing and managing businesses and projects of all kinds of size and budgets. And I worked in many, many countries, I was also lucky to work in many industries. Most of my career I spent in the digital gaming industry, in all verticals. But I also worked in marketing and advertising industry, in sports. I was a professional athlete and also a manager in sports industry. And finally, I worked in education as a lecturer and an assistant professor. But after many years, I actually realized that I find the most joy and deliver the most value as an executive entrepreneur. What does it mean, right? Being an executive within a big organization, because I love developing and implementing innovative ideas and projects that considerable impact on the company's future. And why I like the job? Because I like the challenge, I like the competition, I like the autonomy with these roles gives, and I like intrinsic and extrinsic rewards which entrepreneurial job basically provides. So this is me professionally. When it comes to privately, I'm born, raised, and spent most of my life in Croatia. Last 7 years, I live in Miami, Florida. I'm both Croatian and American citizen, but most importantly, I'm a family man. I'm a proud husband, and I'm a father of 2 girls. And my passion is sports. All my hobbies are sports related, preferably anything outdoors. And in addition to sports, I invest a lot of time in continuous education and knowledge enhancement. This is really important to me. I love all kinds of intellectual work, and it just keeps me sharp and interested.
Fantastic. And I mean, I totally get where you come from. And this is also probably why we connect so well, because you have this very exciting background. You have being a professional athlete. I was never a professional, but I trained and competed on quite high level. And I know what that means when you bring it into management and how you can turn this into being a leader. And I'm also kind of an entrepreneurial guy. So I understand it. And this is a fantastic background. But you have spent basically the last 7 years in the iGaming industry, and I would say that you are one of the veterans in the US iGaming industry. So, and US is so hot right now. I mean, the gaming, it started somewhere with Scandinavia and UK, of course, and then it spread over Europe with the Malta licenses, and lately Germany has been the next big thing, and we see Italy, we see Asia, of course, and India. But now every focus is on the US. It would be fun to see, or interesting to listen to you taking us through the history. I mean, I think the first license in New Jersey was 2013 or something like that. So sure. If you could just put some context to this hype right now.
Yeah, I would actually start a bit earlier, right? I started in this industry in 2006 in Europe, and that was one of the years where there was a big happening. But to understand really the US, you need to go much, much farther back. So there are a few these laws that has been passed in the past which still influence the legislation today. Like one of them, which was passed in 1961, is the Federal Wire Act. Basically, this act forbids the transmission in intrastate or foreign transaction, both of currencies and basically player-related activities. Then in 1992, you have a PASPA, which basically bans the legislation of sports betting. And then in 2006, where I actually joined the industry and was working back then for BWIN, there was a ban of internet gaming in the US, which means that many companies in 2006, including the largest company at that time, Party Gaming, Party Poker, had to leave the US. There is another significant date, which was 2011, which was a Black Friday, which was really the end of all kind of digital gaming in the US, with a ban basically of poker sites, most notably PokerStars and Full Tilt Poker and some others. And then what happened? On November 21st, 2013, the launch of online gaming happened in New Jersey, which was the first significant market that actually launched some kind of form of online and mobile gaming. Delaware launched a bit earlier in the year, but it's a relatively small market. And it was actually the beginning of what I called, let's call it the online gaming in the US. I was part of that process. I was actually working for a company at that time, Boyd Gaming, which owned the property Borgata together with MGM. And we were the first one to launch in the state of New Jersey and became a significant market leader with 40% of the market share. There was a lot of buzz about it, but it was a lot of scare. Many people are worried that online is going to overtake the brick and mortar, that people are going to lose the jobs, and so on and so forth. There was also a very, very slow adoption, right? Because people didn't understand online gaming, they didn't understand how all of this works, and it had to basically invest a lot of money into educating people in how they can use the product, and more importantly, building the trust of the customers into safety, security of the online gaming product. However, at that time in 2013, we were all hopeful that now the online gaming is going to spread like a wildfire throughout the US. And unfortunately, nothing happened, right? We got stuck with online gaming and poker in Delaware, with poker in Nevada, and with poker and online gaming in New Jersey. An interesting point from that time that stayed in my memory, that all the companies at that time were focusing on poker. Like the big play, actually, believe it or not, coming in the US was like, this is going to be a poker market, because poker has a long history in the US. It was a very televised programming at that time, and people are hoping that that poker is actually going to be the leader, which was definitely a wrong thinking for majority of the people. And now we are coming to a near future, right, which is very, very important. You know, on May 14, basically in 2018, the Supreme Court reappealed PASPA, which is basically legislation that bans the sports betting. And this was actually the boom of the sports betting, online sports betting in the US. And currently, I believe we have around 26 states, if I'm right, that have passed the legislation, or they're in a final stage of passing legislation in the US, and many more preparing to do it. So that's kind of a history. We can touch about the differences between sports and online gaming and where this is, but I assume that we can discuss this in some of the later questions.
Yeah, we will, absolutely. And thanks for this. This is fantastic. And there's a red thread in this, and that's kind of the resistance of actually going online full out. I mean, legislation-wise, and the bans and and all those things. Is this from the beginning coming from the bricks and mortar casinos? I mean, we all know that Sheldon Adelson was one of the most conservative when it comes to where you should play, and that should be in the casinos. Has they played a role in this one? And is this role changing now? Because it feels like it's basically a flood waiting to just explode. Or am I wrong in that?
No, you're completely right. I actually spent my career in the US working for brick and mortar companies. So I worked for Boyd Gaming, Borgata, after that with Rush Street Gaming, and then finally last 5 years I'm with Hard Rock. So you're right. The problem was, the industry was functioning in the same way for 50, 60 years, right? It was all about the location. It was all about the integrated resorts. It was all about the brick and mortar business. And there is always a fear of unknown. And digital was unknown for many of these operators. There was also fear about the safety and security related to responsible gaming, but also to security of the data and things like this, because brick and mortar company are not very digitally advanced companies. So they didn't understand what is going on, and there was a huge fear. So that was one of the reasons why there wasn't an expansion of online gaming specifically. But there is also one big difference between sports and online casino. Online casino is very heavily regulated, and because of the concerns of responsible gaming, there is always fear that it's more addictive, and that's why legislators have a kind of more cautious approach to online gaming. On the other hand, when you talk about sports, I think that two kind of areas of entertainment or enjoyment in any human's life is sports and music. Right? This is something that is so engraved in our culture, and that's why sport is so much more accepted. And I think this is the reason why sport has been much easier to pass on side of legislators, and it has been engraved anyway in the culture. On another hand, go ahead, sorry.
No, yes, to shoot in there, I totally get where you're coming from, because culturally, where you play and how you allow people to play or what is happening is also kind of forming the legislation. And we all know that there's a huge market in US for the street corner bookies and basically illegal gambling and illegal sites, etc., etc. So I understand why sports betting is coming first, and then you have this interest of sport in the US as part of the entertainment. So that makes totally sense for me. But at the same time, I'm a bit surprised that we haven't picked this up on the casino side, because there are casinos in most states, but they are bricks and mortar. But that is what you're saying. That's, once again, they have kind of stopped that, and so. But will this change now? I mean, we saw Michigan. I think it was the last week they opened up, and it kind of exploded. The numbers we hear from that, we don't know them yet, but it sounds like they are very, very strong.
Yeah, for sure. Look, the difference between US and any other market in the world when it comes to the casino industry is that in US you have 1,000 casinos, physical properties inside of the US. Most of these, or significant amount of these casinos, are integrated casino resorts, which means that there are not just gambling houses. They are basically entertainment venues in which you can go, have a fine dining, can have a nice day experience, can visit live events, all kinds of concerts, comedy shows, whatever you prefer. So it's a part of entertainment. It's a part of the lifestyle. And I think that this is a big difference between US and any other country in the world. Also, the perception of the consumers about the casinos is very, very different and much more positive in the US than in many other parts of the world. Second thing, casinos are extremely regulated industry in the US, probably one of the most, if not the most regulated industry in the US. And that's why safety, security of the consumers and people involved in this industry is very, very good. So when it comes to this, I actually think that the bigger potential in the US is casino industry, digital gaming casino industry, because there is casinos are spread out through the whole country. There is an interest in this type of entertainment, and we understand that in terms of the dollar value, casino industry is a higher dollar value industry than the sports betting. So I think the sports betting is the first wave. It's something that was much easier to pass and convince basically legislators and government that this actually can have a positive influence, not only that is bringing a tax dollars, but more importantly is regulated actually illegal sports betting, which has been present for decades in the US with zero protections for the consumers in regards
and zero tax and zero tax for the state.
Zero
and
tax,
with zero
right?
tax,
Exactly. And will the how do you say online casino way following the same way is yet to be seen, right? I think that at this point of time is very, very uncertain. There is lots of interpretations, but I learned one thing: you cannot be sure in anything, right? I think that you need a few bigger states that endorse this. If few bigger states endorse this, the others will follow, because you don't want to stay out, right? This is what happened with the sports betting. Your neighbor is having a sports betting, you don't have. What happens? People are wagering cross-border. People do literally drive, go and wager cross-border, and you're just losing on a tax opportunities that you wouldn't have if you don't pass legislation. So we need 2-3 more states to pass the online casino, and once this happens, I think that the speed of legalization is hopefully be much faster than it is right now.
I agree, and we all heard stories about the people living around New Jersey, how they travel over the bridges and so forth to play some bets. So you're right, and I also think that from a player perspective, from a consumer perspective, the US consumers are just waiting for this to happen. So it's not that is there any consumers out there? I think there's we once again we probably see this in Michigan right now, but when you open up, it's a huge interest. So this is up to the lawmakers, and do you think the pandemic now with pressure on state finances and so forth, will this make it easier for legislators to push this through, because there's a need to find new revenue sources?
No, definitely. I think that the COVID pandemic changed everything. It changed the opinions of the brick and mortar industry. It changed the necessity of the governments and the state legislators' attitude towards the legislation. Look, there are budget deficits all over, right? The economy definitely slowed down, and you need to kind of find new revenue sources which are going to enhance this. I think that the second thing, what also improved is, like, look, just consumption of the digital media was high anyway before the COVID, but during the COVID, it just exploded. But together with the consumption of the digital media and digital entertainment, what also kind of boomed is digital transaction, digital financial transaction. So people are becoming more used and more prone to spend money online, even people which haven't been doing this. So we understand that everything is digitalizing. I think that the brick and mortar industry realized that if they don't adapt and adjust, they're going to stay behind. And as you can see, in the last 18 months, we have seen some of the significant transactions from a brick and mortar companies into the digital sphere, because we ultimately expect that in the next 5 years, approximately 30% of all the gaming revenues in the US will be coming from digital verticals.
Yeah, and this is interesting, because we are now in Europe hitting the 30 plus something, 32, 30 something share of online to offline gaming. I think that will be leapfrogged in the US. It will go much faster for all the reasons we spoke about. So in that sense, the online gaming will kind of explode in the US, and of course, as you say, with the bricks and mortars, they can't stay away. I mean, I know that you built a very successful $250 million business with Hard Rock, but excuse the French, that's a piss in Mississippi compared to what the entire group are doing. Have they realized this now? Is the acquisition of William Hill from MGM, is that kind of a proof that they are now stepping into this full throttle, 100%, and MGM's try to acquire Entain, etc., etc.? Is this, have they understood now? Is this the proof for them to take these positions?
Yeah, I mean, definitely did. I think that some companies understood it earlier, some later. I think that one of the first one that kind of decided to do something in regards to this was MGM. Before that, even Caesars. But, everybody kind of decided to do this to tick the boxes. This is at least my experience, to say to the market and say to the shareholders, yes, we are in this area of digital gaming, but nobody really put attention, determination, and most importantly, resources behind this. And I think this drastically changed once they started seeing the successes of DraftKings and FanDuel and valuation behind all of this, and also the results and the revenues. I mean, just the casino industry in New Jersey was almost $1 billion last year. $1 billion for a state which has 9 million people population, right? New Jersey this year combined sports betting and online gaming in 2020 were almost equal revenue, right? Land-based, it comes to the sports betting and online casino, almost basically matched in terms of the revenue. So I think people are smart. These companies have something which new European entrants do not have, meaning they have the brand recognition, they have the databases, they have the relationships both with the legislators, government, and regulators, and it's time for them to decide what they can do. The issue with them is they didn't have a know-how. They didn't have a know-how, they didn't understand how to do it, but now they have acquired that know-how, either through the M&A activities or to hiring a good talent, you know, people like myself coming from international business, they lived the digital gaming many years before, and they're implementing this. So to conclude, there was a different approaches in the brick and mortar industry. Most of them took a very conservative stance. Some of them even negative, we don't want to have anything with this. Some, they decided to do something, but they never made a bold move. And very, very few really made from early start bolder moves. However, now this changed. Now we can say that everybody in brick and mortar industry is thinking how they can jump on this ship and how they can basically participate in all of this. However, usually, you know, the boldest one are the most rewarded, the rewarded one, right? Now it's much, much harder to become a significant participant in the US gaming industry. It requires lots of good assets and lots of capital.
Can we agree on that? Basically, none of these big giants can do this organically. They have to acquire. It's too late to grow organically. Or can you still do that with opening up your own business in state by state by state? Or will they ever do that? Do they have the patience for that?
So I think that the biggest complexity in the US, which people might not be aware, is actually market access, right? This is same as European Union, right? US is basically 50 different states. You need to acquire a market access for any state that you want to participate in. More importantly, you need to adjust to the legislation or regulations of that market, which requires adaptation of the technology as well. And then there are different cultures within each of those markets. The differences are not as visible as in Europe, where there is a different basically language and different customs, but there is a differences between the preferences with the market, and you need to market individually. So market access is a big thing, right? That's why organically it's almost impossible, because none of the land-based players have a market access in more than 10, 11 states. And to be a significant player, you need economies of scales, and they need to acquire additional states. So I think ultimately, who is going to be the winner will heavily depend on what the legislator are going to do with the 4 big states. And we call them, these are the golden grails of the market, which is California, followed by Texas, followed by Florida, and followed by New York. So these 3 markets alone make over 30-something, I think 37% of the US population, and probably even more in terms of the revenues which you can expect from sports betting and online casino. If these legislations will be more liberal and enable access to a variety of operators, then you have a chance. If not, the winners will be those that decided to pay decent amount of money for access in these states ahead of knowing what the legislation is really gonna say.
That's a high-stake gamble.
It is. We are in that industry, and some people made a high-stake gamble, and now they're profiting it. I believe that in the near future or in the midterm future, you know, this industry is going to start getting a less of a premium that it's getting right now in terms of valuation of the market. But I think still this will be a significantly sizable industry in which we know by the experience from Europe and other markets that usually 5, 6 top players reap the most of the benefits, both in terms of the market share and both in the terms of profitability, right? Depending on a country, depending on the region, they have anywhere between 60 and 80% of the market share, and probably even more when it comes to profitability. So you need to be bold, you need to be aggressive, you need to make a big moves, and you need to risk a lot if you want to end up being one of these top 5-6 players in sportsbook, and maybe 8-9 in casino, which are going to be making money, a significant money.
But at the same time, being a decent sized tier 2 operator from Europe, is there a possibility to do it, like say that we're going to aim for 4 states? 4 states in I mean, if we take once again New Jersey. New Jersey is like Sweden, and Sweden is an extremely profitable gaming market for most operators. Succeeding there, it's like the same population, 8-9 million people. You said the spend there was almost $2 billion together with land-based. And that's basically what we have in Sweden. It's I think it's a bit higher. It could be $3 billion in total in Sweden. So I mean, is that a viable solution as well, that you pick 3 states instead of going into 3 regions in Asia or whatever? Is that possible as well?
So I think that we're already seeing kind of 3 different paths, right? Very local state focus operators, right? People that are just going to be a player in one state because they have some kind of a competitive advantage, which is hard to replicate. The second one is a regional players, basically meaning either a region or a few states in which, again, they have a competitive advantage, and then you have a national players, right? US is a bit unique, right? It has both national media and local media. So you, depending on how much market accesses you have, it's worth or not worth to have a national partnerships, right? If you don't have this, you need to have a regional partnership. Specifically in sports, also all the media rights are very dispersed. It's not like in majority of European countries when one company owns 80-90% of all the rights. In US, 4, 5, 6 different media groups own different rights. So it's much more complex in terms of the access. I think that the disadvantage which European companies have is a big one, and it falls into 2 parts. One is market access. And even if they have to acquire it, they have to pay for it, which means that they have less operating capital to invest into marketing and other resources. The second one is brand. Most European brands don't have any meaning or any significance or any connections with the local customers. So they need to invest in building that brand, which requires lots of millions of the dollars, or they need to seek for a partnership with an existing brand, which again eats up into their profitability. Where European companies have experience is a technology, its product, and its operations. However, they need a local talent in order to really leverage this to fullest, right? Many people think, oh, we know this and we do this in many European countries, we are going to do it by ourselves. And I'm telling you that all of them changed their approach. Now everybody has the local teams, everybody is building a US businesses. You can leverage certain knowledge, skill set, and resources from headquarters in Europe, but you have to have leadership here in the US in order to be successful. So the long story short, what is going to happen? You're going to have a national leaders, few companies. You're going to have what I call a regional leaders, and then you're going to have people that are going to be extremely successful maybe in only one market, right? An example, this could be in California or New York or some other states where you have a competitive advantage over others. But in my opinion, the European operators with zero partnership in the US, it will be extremely, extremely hard for them to build a significant market share and, most importantly, profitability, because some of them have been very, very aggressive and they're building a very decent market share and participation. An example, one of these companies is PointsBet, but I wonder at what cost, and will this ultimately replicate into a profitable business?
But at the same time, this makes them to perfect acquisition targets. I mean, they, as you said, they know what they're doing. They have the history of this. They have fantastic. Most of the European big companies has the fantastic operational excellence, and they know how to run casinos and sportsbooks, etc., etc. So I think we can agree on that. A lot of the acquisitions might actually be from west to east, if so.
No, definitely. I mean, as you see, Europe is getting harder and harder. It's getting more regulated. It's getting more competitive. It's very hard to run a profitable business there. And everybody needs to have a play now in the US, because we're all aware that US will be the biggest global gaming market. So you just need to participate and find the best way how to participate in this market. Will everybody be successful? No. But the point is that there are lots of out there, lots of brick and mortar companies which are very cash heavy in many of the cases, which will need that expertise and technology and partnership to be successful in their domestic market. So I think that we're definitely going to see more of a larger M&A transactions. I wonder though if anybody will be able to challenge a few people on the top, which have been very aggressive and bold and already acquired an assets which are necessary to be successful. I'm just going to repeat myself. In order to be successful in the US, you need to first and foremost have a market access. Second, you need to have basically a recognizable and trusted and relevant brand nationally and locally in the US. The third thing, right, and everything else is secondary to this. These are two first prerequisites at this point of time, at this maturity level of the market. After this comes some other things like basically technology, product, operational excellence, and so on and so forth. But if you don't have the first two, brand, market access, you just cannot be successful. Ideally, on top of this, you would layer a database, like in example, what ex-DFS companies had or brick and mortar companies have, and you would add some kind of distribution partnership one way or another, either through the media reach or through the different retail channel where you can either promote or acquire additional customers.
Great. I mean, this makes total sense, and you took my next question. The DFS, they are. I mean, it seems like on your reasoning, they are the perfect launching points for a lot of the brick and mortar. I mean, they have the brands, they have the position, they have it's kind of a betting already, and they have the databases. So it makes sense. I would like to move from operators to providers, and my first question here is. And Evolution. Evolution is a fantastic story with a huge success and done a couple of really smart moves. And I'm one of those that really admire when they acquired NetEnt and got the Red Tiger at the same time, boosting this company for not only being a live casino company, but also having some of the best slots in the market. Will they succeed in the US, in your opinion? Do they have the right products for this? I think they have, because they are entertaining the products with the game shows, etc., which I think suits the US audience. But am I right or wrong here? What's your take on this?
No, I think that you're right. I mean, look, I remember talking to Evolution first time in 2013, right? This was when we first time talked about the market entrance, and they're smart people, right? A smart managed company, and they knew that US, if it happens, will be a big one. But there is one big obstacle when it comes to successful development in the US. First, everything has to be, all your technology has to be based within the borders of the state, which basically increases the operating cost, which means that you have to set up the studio in every state, which is very different than in the models that they manage globally, where they set up studios in 2-3 locations, and then they can basically transmit this to a variety of the countries. So that was the most prohibitive part when we discussed this first time, because remember, the first year or the second year market was like 130, $40 million. And if you look at this, that live dealer is going to make 15-20% of that market, and how much they're going to make out of this, it just didn't have a sense. However, today, when you have $1 billion casino market, of which 20 to 30, let's say 30% comes from table games, and which 50-60% comes from the live dealer, this completely changes the situation. So yes, I wouldn't say it is just evolution. There are many others which could be extremely successful there. And I think that the suppliers are actually the only one who make money at this point of time, right? Operators are making a long-term investments and spending tens and hundreds of millions of dollars into building businesses which would yield returns in the next 2-3 years. Who is actually making profits already now is a select amount of suppliers. In addition to the people like content suppliers, which Live, Dealer, and Evolution is, the biggest actually profit maker currently are media. Let's call them media. It's different kinds of affiliates and different kinds of the arrangements, because they're funneling and generating the consumers for the operators. And it's very kind of low OPEX business with a very, very, very decent margin. There is definitely need for innovation. There is definitely need for adaptation. Many of European products do not work in original form in the US, but the smart companies are adapting and adjusting and creating a localized products together with the input of the operators, which better understand what their consumers really want.
Yeah. So once again, I mean, it seems like it's more profitable right now to sell the shovels than digging for the gold.
It's definitely is for majority of the player, because remember, this is an investment cycles. Like right now, the most important is to be the first to the market, at least for a majority of the players, to basically gain the market share, to put your brand out there, and make sure, you know, that you capture that audience. And that's why everybody's in spending cycles. However, that spending cycles is going to stabilize in the next 2-3 years because of the two reasons. There won't be too many new states to open. Second, your markets are going to start maturing, because at the first year it takes usually 3 to 5 years for market to mature, 3 to really grow, and then 4 and 5 are really to kind of reach to the certain maturity after there is a slow growth. So the revenues are going to become much larger, but your operational and marketing expenses won't drastically increase, and this is where the profit comes. Though we have to be realistic and understand that actually in the US we have much more expenses than in Europe, and these expenses comes first from taxes. Not all the states, countries in the Europe are taxing the gaming revenues, right? You can work through the European Union license. Second one is technology. You have to have technology or majority pieces of the technology in each and every state. A third thing is basically official data from the sports leagues, and so on and so forth. So it's to be seen what are actually going to be margins in the US down the road, especially if there won't be online casino to support and enhance the sports betting profitability.
I agree. This is so interesting. And I have one final question on the provider side before we move to the final part of this. And from my view, aggregation has been extremely powerful in Europe with all the games and all the game studios coming up. It's impossible to keep track on, or basically it's impossible to integrate all these from an operator point of view. Hence, the aggregators like Pariplay and others are taking a very strong position. Do you think we will see the same in the US with aggregators actually handling some of the burden with licensing and cross? So the aggregators are taking licenses in state by state, and by that is paving the way or making it easier for smaller game providers to reach this market.
Yeah, look, again, some similarities and dissimilarities to European market. The first aggregator that I talked to, again, was in 2013. And again, the biggest prohibition was actually requirements in regards to technology and licensing. Remember, you have to get an ancillary license, which means that you, every shareholder which owns more than 5% of the equity in the company, have to go through a complicated licensing process, which can be a long-term and costly, right? And in addition, you have to go and approve each and every game or content that you wanna offer in the market. The third thing, which is very, very important, in Europe, many of the operators have their own technologies, so they are free basically to integrate when and with whom they want. While in the US, you have a couple of solutions in which you're either or using a third-party technology from a big third-party suppliers, which are very slow in integration and have a large roadmap. Some of them even have a conflicting interest in terms of offering their own aggregation tools. So I think that you're going to see this more and more as the market size increases and it has economical sense for aggregators to come in. At the same time, I think there will be longer timelines in terms of necessity to actually place the product, which is integrating either in a proprietary platforms or into third-party supplier platforms, where I think the biggest challenging has been so far. I mean, if you look at the New Jersey market, currently the the largest operator offers 500-600 games, right? When you look this in comparison with Europe, there are operators which offer 2,500-3,000 games. So there is definitely need for more content, but there is also need for localized content, because I think that the currently US is a combination of known local national brands, which are big, basically brick and mortar supplier of the casino games, and international suppliers like NetEnt and similar, which brings kind of a novelty and a new product into the market. Aggregation,
Yes.
definitely future, but it will take a bit of more time.
Yeah, sure. So two reflections there. One is, if you are early in and you really do the investment in time and resources to get all these licenses, you will have a very strong position because everyone needs content. But you're right as well. It's interesting to see. I follow this from a lot of markets perspective, and it always starts in the new market with the bricks and mortar content, whether that has been video slots in Croatia or in Germany. The first wave of players are the players that already play the video slots or the slots or whatever in the local casinos. They are moving on. They want to have their normal games. So you're absolutely right. The localization and the porting of what you recognize when you're in the casino, it's super key to have that on the first online version, so to speak. So it's an interesting balance. And after a while, this market will mature and it will grow, and then you want more and more advanced games. And yeah, it's I agree with you. There's a position both for game developers and aggregators if they can manage this mix, so to speak.
I agree.
Cool. So we are about to round this up, but I would ask you more of a philosophical question here, and because we have been past one of the most crazy years in history with the COVID pandemic. You have been in the US. You've been through a very strange election year with unprecedented events and so forth. So at the same time, if we talk with the COVID, it seems that it has leapfrogged the digitalization in a lot of industries with 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So from your point of view, what is the new normal? Are we more digitalized? Are we coming back to where we were before? Or will we change our behavior, our consumption patterns, our entertainment patterns, etc., etc.?
Sure. Look, this question has been asked many times in the past, right? And nobody really can foresee the future. But just go from a practical point of view, right? I'm a person that travels 120 to 160, 80 days a year, I haven't left Florida where I live for the past 10 months, right? So it definitely changed the behavior of many, many people. I think the question is, will it stick? I think that what we are learning, humans are very adaptable creatures, right? We just adapt to the circumstances. And I think that we learn a lot with this. We learn that work from home is not a problematic thing, that actually in many cases it can increase the productivity, right? Less travel time, less commuting time, less wastage of time on a small talk, and basically focusing on things and tasks. It also increased basically, as I said, consumption of everything what is digital, but also breaking some of the concerns from the past. Should I leave my credit card data online, and so on and so forth? So we are definitely going to see a couple of things. One, continuous growth of consumptions of the digital media and products, continuous increase of our wallet spend in the digital media, and focus on the retail businesses on how they can partially or fully digitalize their businesses. It's just the nature of everybody's business. Look at the Walmart, look at brick and mortar casinos, look at whomever you see now. Everybody needs to have a sizable digital business in order to survive. At the end, I don't think that this is going to be a doom of a retail business. We still need retail. We are still very social people. We still want to go out and about. But I think it's a nice combination of seeing and experiencing in person, but then also being able to consume or to transact with the same a product or a different products digitally.
I agree to 100%, and I always use the cinemas and the sports. It's actually more convenient and it's cheaper, and to watch this film on your TV at home. You have your own popcorn, you have your own beer, you have your own company, etc., etc. And no one is still. We go to the cinemas. You good, Kresimir?
Sorry, yeah.
That's okay. Good. We still go to the cinemas, because we need that. The more digital we become, the larger the need is to surround us with people from time to time. That's also good for sport. We see how before the pandemic, how the soccer audience numbers were rising in Sweden, and ice hockey and handball and all these sports had more and more people coming, because we need to get out of this digital bubble. And at the same time, we spend more and more time there. And I agree with you, we will spend more money in there. So it's for our industry, this could have a very positive effect. And especially if we go back to the US again, where you are opening up now, you will have more customers. I think the growth in the US will initially be faster than in any other gaming market in the history due to these things. It's going to leapfrog. It's going to just do what took like 10 years in Europe. It's going to be done in 2 to 3 years when and if legislation is opening up. So I think you have a fantastic, exciting time ahead of you in over there on the US market.
Look, definitely, future is definitely bright in the US, and US will be a focus for the next few years for majority of the operators in this industry. I think the COVID just kind of progress and excel this because of the reasons that you said, that brick and mortar operator mentality changed, and they realized that they need a digital industry. I think that also legislators and the governments realize that this actually should be regulated and licensed, because this is a revenue generation source, but more importantly, it also protects the consumer, and there will be lots of opportunities there. But in my opinion, the opportunities and the highest rewards are reserved for those which are bold and aggressive enough, and they are willing to take a leap of faith. Those that stay conservative and wait for too long, it will be much, much harder for them to participate, or they will participate with buying into this, which much, much lower returns than the first movers and entrants can expect.
I think that are some fantastic final words from Kresimir. They make sense as always when you debate or talk, and it's been a pleasure. The time has been running. I promised Pierre to keep it around 40 minutes, and I think we are. I could do this for an hour, but we don't have that time, or an hour and a half. It's always a pleasure speaking to you, Kresimir, and thanks a lot for this. And I really appreciate this talk.
Same here. Thank you for having me, Jesper.
Thank you. Good.